Hello and welcome. We are here for another CAP opportunity. We're going to find out from Katie about her uh, whole person therapy. So, Katie is a licensed psychotherapist, life coach, teacher, mentor, wilderness guide with over 25 years of professional experience working with people in and out of the wilderness. Katie incorporates mind and body connection, a natural world, expressive arts, and contemplative awareness to her work with others, and she works with individuals as well as groups to bring forth an innate wisdom and to support them in opening their minds and hearts for greater possibilities. So I want to thank you, Katie, for joining us today. CAP is an organization that is Colorado Association of Psychotherapists. We do encourage people, and I will put something in the video and in the chat in order to give you guys access to how you can join CAP and how you can donate to CAP. We really appreciate your support as we're offering programs such as Katie's to help us um, survive and thrive. All right, Katie, I'm going to go ahead and move it over to you. Hold on just a moment. And Katie, you go for it.
Thank you. Well, thank you for the invitation to be here today. And I'm going to be talking about including the whole person in therapy, somatic, soul, and nature-based interventions, or sometimes I say soil, soma, and soul. And thank you for that introduction. I'll say a few more pieces about myself. I have been working originally as an outdoor educator out in nature for now over 30 years and did a master's degree in somatic psychology at Europa University starting in 1997 and have always been weaving nature into my work, into my somatic work, and have a whole other thread that I love to work with, which is soul, the transpersonal spirituality, and rites of passage. And so for today, we're going to kind of stay broad versus diving deep. And uh, my intentions for you all really, number one is to just be inspired, maybe open your mind, your creativity, see what images, what ahas come through as I'm sharing these different pieces and possibilities today. So gain some greater trust in yourself, in your clients, creativity and wholeness that's right there in the space with us at all times. And again, maybe walk away with a few ahas, ideas, tools, or things that you can incorporate into your practice. So, as we begin, I always love to invite us to take a few breaths just to shift gears from wherever you've been, help you come into the present moment and just be here for this time. So, take a moment and just get comfortable. So, see if there's anything your body needs, any shifting or stretching or adjusting. And if it feels good to you, bringing your attention inward. So maybe closing your eyes or having a soft gaze. And as you bring your attention inward, taking a few moments of pause just to feel the felt sense of the ground beneath you, beneath your feet, or the felt sense of the seat beneath you and behind you. And just allowing that felt sense of ground and your breath just to invite your attention, your presence, bit by bit with each exhale, even more into this moment here now. And as you feel your breath and ground, as we're stepping into this time together, I want to invite you to imagine some place in nature or maybe a nature being that you know that you have had contact with in your life that has felt supportive or grounding or enlivening. This might be a place like your grandmother's farm, or it might be a very particular tree that you used to sit under or creek. So just take a moment, let that place or being arise in your imagination. And as this place or being in nature arises in your memory or felt sense, just notice any of the sensory experiences that are present in this moment. Notice the colors, the movement in this place, or the detail. Notice any sounds that you might hear. Any smells. Notice the felt sense of the air on your skin. And then finally noticing, what is it like to be there now? What's happening in your breath, your muscles? And finally, just getting curious and seeing, does this place or being, if it had words, would it have a message for you? And what would those words be? Without thinking too hard, just letting them float up. And from this place, we're going to shift, bringing with you any of the good feelings, if there are good feelings there that you want to bring into our conversation, presentation. If you felt an exhale or a sense of calm or joy, just bringing that with you right into the room. And in your time, slowly, gently beginning to let a little light in your eyes, or maybe wiggle your fingers and toes a little bit. And we'll shift into our group space together. So that is just a little invitation into one way of connecting with nature, the wisdom of nature, indoors, even online with clients. And definitely every one of you is going to have a different experience. But often when I ask, what are the qualities that are evoked? Some of the common ones that people say are calm, ease, aliveness, peace. And so whatever happened for you is just right. But welcome to this conversation, to this time together. And I want to give a few sentences about the context for this conversation today. Like I said, we're going to stay broad. And really, this is an invitation into more wholeness, more possibility, including more aspects of our beings in our work. And most of you are probably here working in Colorado, since that is what this organization is connected with. And I know here in the Front Range, we are so lucky to have so many different trainings, cutting edge bodies of work. So some of you may be very versed in these different ways of working, while others, some of this may feel new or different. So acknowledging here the way that we all practice as therapists looks very different. There's no one right way. I love saying we learn to practice the art and science of therapy. And a little context for when we are even looking at the field of therapy, psychotherapy, our modern day counseling and therapy really stems out of cultures across time. There have always been the healing elders, the healers of the village. And in many cultures, um, still today and in the past, there wasn't a lot of separation between body, mind, spirit. There were the medicine people, maybe the shamans of the village, the curanderas, the priests, and often these folks, they would, with any problem, you would come to them and they would do a variety of different healing modalities, talking, bringing in supportive community, giving you herbs, praying to the gods. So this is the big lineage that we come out of. And then when we look at the way that therapy has really evolved over the last century and more beyond, that the way that we're really practicing it in the US and other countries is more of a Western form of medicine work or healing work that has come out of patriarchal colonized societies where body and mind were separated. And if we think about Freud, right, he was a doctor. This came out of the medical model where he was really looking at what is the problem? What do we need to control or fix? And so I know for me, a lot of the bodies of work that I have studied, somatic therapy, nature-based therapy, transpersonal therapies, um, they've in the modern way that we've practiced, they've really come up through the grassroots where massage therapists were finding their clients having emotions and ahas through body work. Dancers were having experiences of people having more freedom in their lives through movement. And so it's funny because often we talk about these new techniques or cutting edge techniques, but I like to acknowledge that they're not new. We're not discovering them. We're essentially remembering and reclaiming these ways that are interwoven into the fibers of our being, the fibers of our wholeness. And within the context of the medical model, they have been othered. They have been often our bodies, again, our spirituality has been put on the outside. So we're reclaiming, remembering. Um, so if you think about illness or disease, dis-ease typically involves shutting down, turning away from, cutting off, or ostracizing parts of ourselves, our emotions, or our experiences. And so what we're doing here is reclaiming more of ourselves. Let's see. So reconnecting, reincorporating more of us, more of our body, mind, soul connection, body, mind, soul in the therapeutic process. And I want to say a few words about somatic work to begin with. So again, this has in the therapy world has been seen as cutting edge. When I started my master's degree in 1997, somatic therapy was considered woo-woo. Since then, we know Bessel van der Kolk, among many others, have dedicated their lives and careers to actually researching. And so now we know so much about brain science and the nervous system and how that relates to anxiety, depression, trauma, etc. So we have a lot more information over the last few decades. But so I am a somatic therapist through and through, and with somatic therapy, with including the body in consciously in the work that we do, this could be your primary theoretical orientation, which it is for me, or it might be tools and techniques that you weave in to simply, again, bring in and acknowledge more aspects of our ways of knowing and wisdom, etc. I want to name this word, theoretical orientation. We throw this around a lot, and especially in the therapy world for students or new clinicians, often that feels a little scary. What is my theoretical orientation, or how do I describe it? And to me, it excites me to talk about this because for me, I like to break it down in the most basic sense, theoretical orientation, pointing to what do I believe as a clinician creates health? What do I believe creates illness or dis-ease? And thus, what do I believe the pathway of healing or the pathway back to health is? And from a somatic perspective, at least in the way that I was trained, which was pretty eclectically, um, health is flow. Health is energetic flow through our body minds. So that's our breath, our muscles, our emotions flow. So when we're not inhibiting the flow, life is movement, life is energy. Waves are coming in, waves are going out, there's regulation. And illness or dis-ease is stopping the flow or truncating the movement. And we do that in so many ways, primarily holding our breath, tightening our muscles, holding things back. And what that does when we hold back that flow, and we do that for many reasons, we're told, you're fine, I'll give you something to cry about, blah, 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 all the messages that we get, we stop it so we don't get in trouble, we don't look bad, we don't draw attention to ourselves. And this becomes habit over time. And again, if we're walking around, right, with a tension pattern, this is going to create pain, discomfort, illness in our body, dis-ease, unease in some way. So at the most basic level, that is illness from a somatic therapy perspective. And then healing is opening the flow back up to the movement. And when we include awareness of the body, because this is the place we are holding all of our memories, all of our beliefs, all of our experiences, it's another avenue and doorway into opening up that flow in so many different ways. So again, some of you may be trained already in a whole somatic modality. And really, if somatic therapy is your primary theoretical orientation, like it is for me, I am always looking at this body-mind connection, all of it, and body-mind-soul connection, and looking at what needs to happen next in order to open the flow. So that might be to name something and be seen and acknowledged. It might be to feel something, to have a good cry, to feel the sadness or the grief, or it might be to take a deep breath or stand up and move. If there are techniques, there are so many ways that you can bring techniques in to help regulate the nervous system, bring a greater awareness for people to what is a yes, what is a no, what is the emotion that I'm holding? What am I not saying? What am I not feeling? So here are just some examples of ways that all of us can be incorporating the body-mind connection into our work, regardless of the level of training. So one is reclaiming fluency in the language of the body. One of the first things I ask clients when I start working with them, what is your relationship with your somatic awareness? Of course, I get a whole range of answers from I don't really have a lot of somatic awareness to people who are yoga instructors and other somatic therapists who have quite a lot of awareness of their body. I love to say, so our somatic experience was our first language. When we're babies, our whole experience of the world is how we feel in our bodies. So if you hang around babies very often, you know when they're fed, when they're warm, when they're satisfied, they smile, they exhale, they make eye contact, they coo. And when they're uncomfortable, when they're having gas or when they're hungry, they fuss or they scream. And so that is their that is their language. That is what their experience of the world is. That is what they're responding to. That's how they're expressing. They don't hold back. And so I love to say our first language was our somatic experience. If you think that you don't have access to that or you don't know, that's just because people told you not to trust that over time. And trust that, and over time, you separated from that. But the good news is you absolutely have access to this. And this is something that we can turn toward, that we can get to know. And if nothing else, our bodies are really what gives us signs about what we want to move toward, what we don't want, where our boundaries are. And so, at the most basic level, starting to be curious about the language of the body can open up a whole level of exploration and point us toward really knowing and trusting ourselves even more. So, with that, and the next step that I always work with people around is trusting and tolerating sensation. So first we just get curious, what are the sensations that I'm experiencing? And that might be pleasant sensations, that might be uncomfortable sensations. Often the uncomfortable sensations are often louder and grab our attention. But I'm also going to help people focus on what feels good because theoretically, most of us want to feel good and don't want to feel bad. And so I love to help people recognize what feels good and then grow their capacity to tolerate staying connected to that sensation through breathing into that part of their body, describing what it feels like. So we're going to trust and tolerate sensation, which again is just the way to begin to befriend and reclaim this language that we was our first language. So much of the work that we know these days, the more cutting edge somatic uh, work, which is now highly researched, is the way that our nervous system state impacts how we feel in our bodies, how our brains work, our focus works, how we perceive the world. And so, a huge part of the work that I do with people is working with the nervous system. Polyvagal theory talks about recognizing the different states and the beliefs that come with the different states. The triune brain theory looks at, again, what is happening in our body, what's happening in our nervous systems when we're under threat or when we're at rest, what does it look like when we're in our window of tolerance within our nervous system? All these terms are used and practiced. And so the more that we can recognize our nervous system states and learn ways to shift those through breath, through movement, through resourcing, connecting with something that is good. Again, what this does is it helps bring in awareness, bring in a sense of choice, mastery, helps clients feel like, oh, I know what to do when I'm feeling overwhelmed. Here are the ways that I can regulate my nervous system. And there are so many books and webinars and resources, workbooks on this at this point. So this is huge. Another piece that we can all work with in our practice, listening to what the body has to say. And some people feel more connected to this than others. It is more of a bottom up process, a creative process to when we find a sensation or an aspect of our body that we're really drawn to or repelled by, if we ask that part of our body, if it had words, what would it be saying? That often information does arise. And even surprisingly for many people, that they wouldn't have thought, I wouldn't have thought this from my head, that this is what my body would say. So amazing information can come if we kind of let our let our minds open to be open to receiving. And then another really common way that we can all work with incorporating the body is opening up movement pathways of expression, emotion, and flow. And so in somatic trauma work, which is one of the bodies of work that I teach, one of the things that we ask is when you are thinking about this experience, when it's coming up in your memory, or even as you're sitting here with me now talking about this, what are you feeling in your body? And as you feel that place in your body, notice what is the impulse that's happening or trying to happen. So, whether it's an experience that happened once, a traumatic or scary experience, or a situation that we were in over time, like a household where we couldn't express our opinions or we couldn't express our emotions, what happens is the body develops habits of holding back the expression or the movement that we couldn't do because it wasn't safe at that time. And that often becomes habituated holding. So, when we ask the body, what's the impulse that's happening or trying to happen? Often there's an image or a felt sense impulse, and often that's a scream or a push or a run or a hide. And so when we ask the body even that simple question and something emerges, when we get an answer, then we can actually do that thing or imagine doing that thing, which in and of itself is a recovery, a reopening of that pathway that has been stunted. And what that does is it opens the flow, it opens the body for deeper breath, for maybe some tears to come, shaking to come, but the old patterns to start to really release and dissolve. Okay, I'm curious if any of you want to share anything about what are some of your go-to ways in your work already of honoring body-mind connection, body-mind wisdom? Are there particular common practices that you do?
I was thinking as you were talking how valuable this is because people are not good at handling their emotions, and our ability to teach people to be resilient and handle their emotions will help them not need to go to something like drugs or alcohol in order to manage emotions that they, because we're giving them tools to deal with that. Um, but I was going to say, I'm a walker. So I walk with my dog. We do about 3 miles a day walking outside. And I do it outside intentionally because of nature, because of the sounds, because it helps my body adjust to the weather changes, feeling the air on my skin, feeling the earth beneath my feet, and all those things
Yeah.
uh, are super helpful for me. It's like a little walking meditation for me when I go out and walk. And my dog's young, but we're getting there, and I can actually kind of think now when instead of
Oh,
control the dog.
yes, yes.
And so other ones that I'm showing up here are things like dancing. I have laughter, um, putting words into my emotions and like understanding what those emotions are,
Yeah.
um, and then just having conversations with other people. Those are
Yeah.
some of the ones that are showing up here.
Ah, thank you. Yes, thank you, everyone. Thank you for reading those out. And so many ways to move, to process, to let that flow go through the actual movement of walking, dancing, through talking. That's a way of processing. And I think something you said just struck me about, if it wasn't safe to have emotions, then there are a couple nuances to that. One is that we literally become afraid of our own sensations and need to go away from them. And I say there are a million ways we can, go to a million things we can be addicted to these days at any moment, right? You just turn on the screen and there's so many things to do or look at. And so one is to at the most basic level, tolerating the sensation. And then there could be a whole piece around, emotion was dangerous. And so our roles as therapists and healers are really to help bring in that safety and support and acceptance and acknowledgement from a safe other. And that's complex if we're being perceived as it's just not safe to feel in front of other people. So, such a huge part of this is really understanding those different levels, the fear of our own sensations as well as the fear of our emotions and being seen in those emotions. So, thank you for those comments there. Okay. So, yeah, shifting to nature. I love that you also shared the piece about walking outside, walking the dog. Nature, I love incorporating nature into the therapeutic process. Like I shared at the beginning, I was working as an outdoor educator before I even went to graduate school and became a therapist. And I knew that I always wanted to incorporate nature connection into my work because it was such an amazing, healing, grounding, enlivening thing for me. So when I was in graduate school, there were no master's programs in nature therapy, adventure therapy, which there are now. So every special project I had in my somatic program, I would bring in nature connection. So it's so fun. It is such a embodied movement experience. Like you were saying, we can feel the air on our skin. We can hear the sounds. Often we are moving or engaging or taking deeper breaths in some way. So these two pieces go so, so well together. I also taught at the Naropa was called Wilderness Therapy Master's Program, and now it's nature-based therapy. From the very beginning, as I was graduating with my degree, this program started. So I was a big part of helping with the evolution of the program over time. And so over the years, I've had so many therapists be in touch with me and say, how do I work outside ethically, responsibly, safely? If I don't have a degree, do I need a whole nother degree? And so one of my passions really from the beginning has been to say, no, we are nature. We are the natural world. And people will say, if I feel good outside, is that bad because I'm bringing my clients outside because I feel better? And I always think, well, if you feel better, don't you think there's a possibility that your clients feel better also? And of course, we want to get informed consent. I have some resources I can share with you all if that is something you want to do or like look at, am I doing this responsibly? We want to practice within our scope of practice. But we are nature. And so, one way of incorporating the natural world into our therapy is simply sitting or walking outside. So, sitting maybe out on the deck where you have your office, or walking around the block, or going to they call it nearby nature. So, somewhere that's a park that you can sit on a park bench or sit near the creek in the Front Range. We're so lucky to have such gorgeous nature. And simply by being outside, there is a whole therapeutic experience that opens up. Often we are, like I said, in our bodies more. Often we're moving, taking deeper breaths, fresh air. Being outside increases our endorphins and lowers cortisol. There's also studies around just even smelling the dirt, smelling the trees, has a positive physiological response. So just being outside. Also, once we're out there, opening up our senses, bringing people into the present moment and into connection to what's resourcing them, what's pleasing them. I've been working with people with significant trauma my whole career. I started working at the Boulder Boulder Safe House and Rape Crisis Center. So I was working from the very beginning with people that I knew had significant traumatic experiences. And so that's been a whole thread of what I've done and taught. And at the basis of how I think about, working with trauma is working with nervous system regulation. And that starts with state shift. How do we resource? How do we shift into a state of greater calm, ease, good, relief, or better than we felt before? And nature is such an incredible resource in that way because It's dynamic. It's not personal, right? If there's rain, it's not personal against you. So it's dynamic. Our senses are open. There's a lot to pay attention to. It really brings us into the present moment. And when we've experienced trauma, what happens is parts of us are stuck in the past, right? Or parts of us are stuck in an activation cycle, perceiving the world from that place. So nature is an immediate present moment relational experience that invites our attention into the here and now. And often we can find something that is pleasing, whether that's a color, whether that's a movement, a smell. And when we bring our attention to what pleases us, it naturally starts to shift our body mind state. So that's also something that you can do indoors or online. So I also teach people a nature-based therapy course online, 8-week online course, which I started over COVID. I had only been working outdoors before that. And I had a couple people in that class right at the beginning of COVID. One was in Italy and one was in New York City, and they were on full lockdown, so they couldn't even walk out of their apartment. So we got very curious. Two of the exercises I did, and I do a lot now with people, with both clients and clinicians when I'm teaching, is to first look around the space that you're in right now. So if you're indoors, you can do this. Look around and see who is here, what nature beings, or how is nature in or represented in your space right now. So, for example, well, you definitely look around your space. As I look around my space, I have plants, several living plants in here. I have nature art. I have a, can't see this, but I have like painting of a canyon, and I have uh, feathers on my pillow. Um, I can also look out the window, and I happen to be facing the Flatiron, so I can see the mountains out my window. I can see the sky. So when people start looking around their space, even indoors, often they're so surprised at what they have access to. And just that starts to orient us in a more of a curious way, present moment way, relational way. So you can do that also, if you are working at a distance, I'll have people go sit outside in their backyard. Maybe sit or we'll walk and talk on the phone. So there are a lot of ways to get creative, even if you don't have access to or accessibility to a lot of outdoor nature. Okay, like I've been saying, nature is dynamic. It's always changing, shifting, in motion, which brings us into the present moment and in relationship with that. There are metaphors everywhere, right? So birth, death, decay, um, struggle, flourishment. So anything that we're working with on a therapeutic level, we can find a metaphor in nature. And so one of my favorite things to do, and again, you can do this just sitting on a deck or looking out the window, or if you're, out on a trail, if I'm working, whatever I'm working with my client around, let's say grief, and they're in a moment of overwhelm or stuck with their grief, I might say, I want you to look around and see if you can find something out there, something in nature, something on the land that represents your grief. And almost, I'd say, I don't ever remember that someone saying nothing. So most of the time, someone will find something. And with that visual, a lot can open up. It's like a mirroring. We get to see and feel our own experience a little bit more deeply, more nuanced. It helps us embody it. And then we can have a conversation. Tell me why you picked that tree as a representation of your grief. And they might say, there's this gnarled part, yet it's still alive and thriving. And so it's a great place to just expand our own awareness in relationship with the things that are happening within ourselves, but also seeing it outside of us. also nature is a whole ecosystem. And so the whole of the ecosystem is a mirror to the ecosystem within us, can help us when we have aspects or parts of ourselves that we don't like, that we push down. When we look at it as a part of the ecosystem, we can also start to see the significance and the necessity of all parts of our experience, that they actually work together. Again, not cutting anything out, but including more of it. And then connection with nature, it's a living relationship. So we can make physical contact with it, visual contact, energetic contact with nature. Um, I do a lot of attachment work also with people with nature. And when people haven't been safe or supportive, help them to really come into contact with the earth. What's it like to yield into the support of the earth? What's it like to, yes, some of my clients do hug trees, hug the tree and feel that interchange of breath, feel that interchange of contact. Um, and then it is so common that people express having spiritual experiences in nature. So I also do EMDR as one of the modalities that I work with. And one of the key pieces when we start working doing EMDR is we have people find a calm or safe space to go to, when we are finished with the session so that we can help state shift and regulate. And in my experience, I will say probably 9 out of 10, 8 or 9 out of 10 people choose a place in nature as their calm space, whether a real space that they've been or one that is evoked. And many people I've worked with who don't necessarily identify as religious say that I've had spiritual experiences in nature, or that is the one place that I feel connected to something greater. So again, there's something just that opens up and invites more of our aliveness, more aspects of ourselves in nature. Okay. Let's see. Um, feel like I think I thought I missed a slide. Um, oh, did I miss this part? I didn't talk about this, did I? No. Um,
It doesn't look familiar, no.
okay. Somehow I skipped over a few of the slides. Okay, well, I'll go through this quickly. I know we're getting toward the end a little bit, but so the third piece here is soul. What does soul-based mean? And when we're again including this into our experience or including this aspect of our client's experience, even if we have a different definitions, different spirituality, this is a whole aspect of our being. And so different bodies of theory and practice utilize the term soul differently. And so just to acknowledge that one is in Jungian work, there are different nuances of how they talk about soul, but one definition that I use is the felt depth of our inner life and the mediator, the soul as the mediator of meaning, the part of us that relates to images, symbols, and uh, un unconscious. Also, the part that basically is the mediator between inner and outer experience. So, in the work that I do, I facilitate a training called somatic soul-based trauma training. And people often say, what do you mean by soul? And when I think about including soul or including this aspect of ourselves, I hold this pretty widely. But um, what I mean is that we're really opening up to other ways of knowing, opening up the possibility to other ways of feeling, knowing, and healing that which is not observable. Um, Trusting There are many different ways that we receive information. So examples of how this could show up, trusting different ways that we receive information. So often I do an exercise with my students that we look at, we work through different tracking channels. What are the different ways that we're receiving information? What kind of information are we receiving when we're sitting with a client? There's what we see, right? What we see with what's happening with them. There's what we hear, there's the words, there's the tone that we're receiving. There's a felt sense. What am I feeling in my own body as I'm sitting with you? Our nervous systems act like tuning forks. So a lot is happening in the space. And again, from a somatic perspective, the more that we listen and trust this, the more that we can utilize this information around what's going on with our clients. What do we do from there? But also, we get intuition, and intuition is essentially something that's coming through based on information we're picking up consciously and unconsciously. So, intuition might be we're getting images or words are coming. And so, how do we open to that as possible information without needing to know what it means, but to bring it in as a gift, bring it in as a curiosity with our clients? Also, working with energy, and different ones of us have different sensitivities to energy. Again, that could be the energy of the emotion in the room or the energy, the energetic boundaries. How much space are we taking up, are our clients taking up? Or how much are we pulling back? And we can start to feel that. I also look at unstoried trauma, and this is a big category that I also talk about with clinicians. And unstoried simply means we don't really know where it came from. And people have different paradigms or beliefs or stories about where their unstoried, unknown trauma came from. And whether you believe in this or not, here are different ways that people might hold it. One, intergenerational trauma. So, all the ways that beliefs, fears, traumas, even resiliency gets passed from lineage to, or um, from one, oh my gosh, a generation to the next, through even the way we hold our bodies, through the way we react to the world, to the things that we say about the world. um, Prenatal trauma. So that which we don't have conscious memory of, but we have somatic memory of, energetic memory of. Some people would say that's even preconception, what happened, or in utero. Past lives. Are there are there feelings or images or stories that keep coming through? And again, even if we don't believe this, if our clients have a sense of, I think this is a past life, I don't know where this came from, we can hold that as possible. Spiritual experiences of any sorts. Um, and finally, the other way that I incorporate this or think about what does soul-based mean? How do we include this? Is thinking about therapy, trauma, and transition, which is the reasons people come to us, right? As a rite of passage. And there's a whole rite of passage model that looks at life change, where the first aspect is death or letting go of the old way, or maybe the old way being taken in the case of a traumatic experience or a loss. And when this old way ends or this aspect of our life is taken, it puts us into this space of unknown, of grieving, of questioning. And often that's a pretty long stage, like into wandering in the desert. And it takes us a while to actually listen, to live, to walk, to question, to find our way into the new space, the new identity. And there's so much meaning and even core sense of self that often gets wrapped up in these places. Post-traumatic growth is a great model of looking at this. I'm not who I was before, but I'm not who I'm becoming yet. And when we get to the stage of post-traumatic growth, it is, wow, I'm not the same person that I was before that. traumatic thing happen, but I would never know what I know now. I would never have the resources I have now from going through this hard thing. So when we can hold adversity really as a rite of passage for many people, hearing this model helps to normalize and give them a map around where they are on this bigger, what some people would call soul journey. And based on time, I'm going to keep going, but you can consider, how does this aspect of people's experience showing up in your work? Again, how do you hold this? And how might you sit with others and invite them into their beliefs or experiences, even if they're different from yours? So simple here, these are I mean, obviously it's way more complex than this, but how do we work with soul-based experiences? Number one, believe people, whether or not, again, we understand it consciously, or we learned it in grad school, or we understand them. There's some information, there's some experience that's coming through that is helpful to make space for. So be curious, be curious. You don't have to know all the answers. Our clients have more answers even than we do about their own experience. Hold everything as possible, right? So I don't know what's actually true. I like to say, I actually do hold that past lives are possible, but I don't remember any of mine. So I like to say, many of us only remember, the things in this lifetime. Some of us have memories of something else, but let's hold all of this as possible. And then finally, whatever information's coming through, whether it's dreams, memories, images, spiritual experiences, work with it like we would work with other experiences that are known or tangible in someone's life. And from a somatic perspective, for me, what that means is listening. What is the body trying to do? Is it trying to have a boundary? Does it need to express and feel something? Does it need to take a deep breath and take in nourishment? So, on an organismic level, our bodies are wise. Every impulse is wise. And it's the material from the inside and the outside that are evoking the patterns. It's really the patterns that people are coming in with. And so any of these are a doorway in, any of these soul-based experiences, it's a doorway into looking at how are we organizing? How's our client organizing around this experience, around this belief? And it gives us a doorway into the movement, doorway into feeling, doorway into acceptance, all the things that we bring and that we believe in our different theoretical orientations are part of the healing process, a lot of which is being witnessed, supported, guided, attuned to, which is a huge part of our role as a therapist. Okay, so we did. I actually skip this one. Okay, so bringing it all together. So the more aspects of ourself and experiences we can welcome and be present for, the more we can experience our wholeness and our full aliveness. So the more aspects of our own selves and others we can welcome and be present for, the more we can experience our wholeness and full aliveness. So this is, how do we include more of us in the process? Holding presence, curiosity, compassion for all aspects of our experience, and learning to help our clients do that. Creates trust in our own body, mind, soul, wisdom, groundedness, presence, and ultimately, when we have trust, enough relative safety, presence, then the energy starts to move and flow in and of itself. So often when I'm resourcing with people, I mentioned this a little bit earlier, we're going toward regulation, we're going toward feeling better. But when the body exhales, often what happens is that those holding patterns naturally start releasing, which commonly looks like crying, little shaking. And if we've been afraid of our own sensations, that can become a trigger. So this is where we hold, okay, what if we can trust the movement, that our bodies are actually releasing and regulating in this moment? So when we can have enough relative safety inside and outside, our bodies can open to that flow. Okay, so we are about at the end. I'll invite us all to take a deep breath. Just feel the ground beneath you, just like when we began. And just to consider for yourself, you don't need to share, but just notice what's struck a chord. Is anything that I've talked about today lit up an idea for you? Is there anything you might want to experiment with, inviting into your work with clients? There's also, if anything here struck you as like, I want to learn more about that. But again, there's so many resources on all of these topics out there. Okay. And then I'll just take a moment and see, are there any questions here that anybody has? Anything you want to share that struck you?
I'm just looking at this again. I liked the idea of just leaving it open for anything to show up, so that when you ask the question, what am I walking away with? I just really want to be open to, anything kind of showing up, because the clients sometimes have their own way of expressing things and their own language and their own way their body deals with things. And I don't know what those things are. So giving them the opportunity to express things the way that they express them, and then just dance with it. Like, how does it show up for you? Let's see what that looks like, and not necessarily holding things so tightly. And
Mhm.
anytime that I can, it's really shifted my life. I started walking during COVID, so
Mhm.
I felt like I needed it, because I just wanted to go outside. And I live, in a rural area, not really rural, but like, not suburbia, and I can go outside even during that time and walk and be in my neighborhood, and
Yeah.
um, feel the earth beneath my feet, and just do what I need to do. And so, um, and the other thing that still strikes me is our inability to connect with our emotions, and the fear around connecting with our emotions
Mhm.
keeps people using alternative sources to deal with, as a coping mechanism. And I think they just need to find other alternatives to, and learn how to cope, and with when things get stressful, rather than going and getting a drink, or doing
Yes.
some kind of drugs or whatever. Although there's nothing wrong with them, it's just, I if someone's using it and that's their complete crutch on how to deal with their emotions, probably not the best way of getting it done.
Yes. Again, I just think about from a somatic perspective, it's so much about not being able to tolerate what it feels like to be in this body. So I want to escape it. And so this is where I think the somatic work is so helpful, because how do we shift those habits when we haven't had a lot of safety in our lives, maybe, and in our bodies? It really is a process of learning. How do we stay present and shift states? How do we connect with something good? And how do we even stay connected to the good? Because when sensation is scary, same part of our brain that registers pain registers pleasure. Often the good feeling also can feel scary.
Yeah.
So it's so helpful to have an ally, right? When it's like, how do we shift if we've never had that experience before?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I likewise during COVID, I pretty much walked every day, and it was amazing. It was such like a highlight of just like feeling I feel different the minute I walk outside. Even like walking around the block
Yeah,
can help shift things.
absolutely. It was necessary for my well-being, for sure.
Mm, Wonderful. Well, I have some final pieces that I'll also leave this information with you. I can leave the slide deck, however, is best to share this with people. But again, Katie Asmus, I'm from the Somatic Nature Therapy Institute. Actually, it's a group holistic therapy practice in Boulder, Colorado. I have other clinicians. And then a huge part of the work I do is training therapists in nature-based therapy, somatic, soul-based trauma therapy, and rites of passage work. And all of these resources that I'm giving you here, these are all free resources that I have on my website, and I'll leave the links here. But the Somatic Roadmap webinar, that's actually a whole hour-long webinar that I did recently that talks about being a somatic practitioner and how do you introduce this from the beginning of your work, set clients up for success to start to be curious and work somatically. Um, the second one, ethical, logistical, and practical considerations for outdoor therapy. There's both a webinar and, oh, there's a webinar and then there's also just a checklist on my website. And I really created this to say, practice within your scope of practice, but anybody can go outdoors and there are all the different things to consider about informed consent, thinking about weather, thinking about where you're going to be. So if you want to incorporate that, you can just begin simply now. Um, and number four, five nature therapy practices guide. Other, again, things that you can just do indoors, outdoors, very simple ways of connecting with nature. And then the third one, a guide to creating personally meaningful, culturally relevant ceremonies. And that's a resource my dear friend and colleague, Hoeatea Bryson, and I made for our training, but we offer it to the public. And it's a 20-page guide around creating ceremony and rituals that are personally meaningful as opposed to taking them from another person's culture. And if that's something you do and also want to bring in with your clients, it's a great resource, and you're welcome to share any of these with anyone you'd like. So, hopefully, if you want to go deeper, there's some information. And like I said, so many other resources out there these days. So, as we end, I would love to just read a poem.
Nice.
Yeah, so thank you all for being here. Thank you for listening. Hope this left you with some food for thought, maybe a little inspiration or creative ideas. And as we began, I'll invite us into a final few breaths. So you can, again, just get comfortable. Maybe close your eyes or have a soft gaze. Feel your breath, your exhales, what's present now. And in honor of including the wisdom of our bodies and nature, you do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscapes, over the prairies and the deep trees, the mountains and the rivers. Meanwhile, the wild geese, high in the clean blue air, are heading home again. Wherever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over, announcing your place in the family of things. Wild Geese by Mary Oliver.
Lovely.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. And Please, again, we're going to include the links to our CAP website and for the future events, as well as your opportunity to donate to our organization. And so, I really want to thank you again, Katie, for sharing your wisdom today, and um, and looking forward to the next opportunity for education. So, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.